O'Connell from the University of Cape Town. Back home, I'm a visual studies scholar, and my research interest is thinking about lives after oppression, and particularly lives after apartheid back in South Africa. Coloured comes out of a particular part of Cape Town called the Cape Flats. Cape Town, in many ways, is a very divided city. It is, if you ask most tourists to talk about Cape Town, they'll say either Robben Island or Table Mountain. And in many ways, this frames what the city looks like and how it behaves. And when I say divided, atop, on a part on the slopes, you'll find a memorial called Rhodes Memorial, which frames the university that I come from in very particular ways. We've had a struggle for transformation that's centered around the Rhodes statue. But it also overlooks an area called the Cape Flats, which comes out of apartheid practices of forced removals. Forced removals, the Group Areas Act of 1950 deems that certain parts of the city are only for whites, and they start breaking up families and communities and shunting them off to this grey and dusty area that's really sometimes only 15 minutes from Cape Town, but it could well be a different universe. And they dump people there, and they didn't really move families together or streets together. They really mixed up everybody. So the Cape Flats is a complex space. It is mired in gang activity. It is prone and home to all kinds of socio-economic ills, and it's a dangerous place to be. So, but out of this place that is anything but hospitable, it is anything but beautiful. As I said, the Cape Flats, it really is flat. Nothing grows there. It's just sand. It's difficult to grow anything. You need copious amounts of water to grow a patch of grass. Out of this place, out of this space, emerges a number of pageants, and pageants across the Cape Flats is part and parcel of that dusty ground. There's not a weekend that goes by that there isn't a pageant, either Miss Teenager or whatever. And this research project called Coloured looks at two pageants, Miss Gay Western Cape and Miss Spring Queen. Spring Queen being a pageant of the clothing and textile workers union industry in Cape Town, and Miss Gay Western Cape, as the name implies, a pageant of gay men in drag that has been running for the last couple of years. Spring Queen has been carrying on for almost 50 years. And Coloured looks at this notion of in-betweenity, neither here nor there, lives lived on the periphery, lives lived on the shadows, but also lives that have the amazing capacity to be resilient, to be tenacious, and to show imagination. And Coloured looks at these pageants I think through a wonderfully personal way, to see that in spite of all of this, there's a moment on a ramp, whether it's the Spring Queen ramp or whether it's the Miss Gay Western Cape ramp, where bodies who are considered to be either not fitting the bench, not heteronormative in the one sense, or not traditionally or conventionally beautiful in the other, kind of shove all of that by the wayside. And for that one moment, we have bodies, black bodies and other kinds of bodies, performing a freedom that we can look at to reimagine what freedom can yet look like in South Africa. I've been working on the Spring Queen pageant for the last 4 years, and I don't know what draws me to it. I'm not particularly, I have lots of family members who've worked in the clothing trade, but none of my immediate families worked in it. But there was something, and again, maybe as a coloured woman, it was always in my consciousness. We spoke about Spring Queen, we knew about factory shops, and we knew about women doing this. And when I come to the university and I say, well, I've recently appointed, I want to do a project on Spring Queen, the clothing and textile trade. And there's kind of like a blank look. Nobody quite knows what I'm talking about. And that really epitomizes the divide. That, notwithstanding the fact that Spring Queen, if you go to anybody on the Cape Flats and you say Spring Queen, they know exactly what you're talking about. Yet 10 minutes away, the more upper class and traditionally white suburbs, they have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. So the idea of community is a very fractured one. I don't see there is a community of Cape Townians. But certainly for Spring Queen and certainly for Miss Gay Western Cape, for those 6 months, the Spring Queen fever starts around June each year, where there are preliminary qualifying rounds in each factory. Also, the clothing and textile, it's important to note that the clothing and textile trade in South Africa has decreased significantly. We've had thousands of retrenchments. Our industry has been decimated by illegal imports, by the rise of certainly China's dominance. We struggle with an import duty system and we're not that mechanized. We're not that mechanized. And at the end of the day, we're not talking about millions and millions of people. These are women who I think in many ways can be considered superfluous. They don't make up a huge constituency in terms of voting or an electorate. So this community is a small one. But yet for 6 months of the year, you have these women of all shapes, colors, sizes, marital status, banding together around a pageant and thinking about ways of representing themselves as anything other than the colored factory worker the world sees them to be. And I think it's absolutely magical. They do that. And they perform that, and they perform that freedom and imagination, as I said, through these wonderful dresses that they sponsor, that they raise through karaoke evenings, and auntie does this one, and this one's going to give that fabric, and this one's going to give this sequence. So there's a wonderful sense of togetherness, to get their queen through to the final, and to get their queen through to win. And for me, that speaks about a community that, yes, has lots of complex issues and lots of challenges. But I think we can look to this moment of creativity. We can start to imagine, and we expand on that moment, and we can expand on a self-representation. Then we can start thinking about what it means to live post-apartheid. I think it's an excellent question, Andrew, because we really haven't started to think really seriously enough about bodies and fashion as archive, as traces of who we are, and how to think of representations around fashion. And when I look at a dress, or when I look at, if I look at the t-shirt that you wore and you took it off, there's traces of who you are in that. There's parts of your skin or your, flecks of hair and dust that echoes the body that occupies it. So we start thinking about clothes and fabrics and textiles that brush our skins in ways that can tell us about the lives inhabited, that these clothes cover. We can start to recognize lives in that way. But I also think, for me, what drew me to this project is that often we'll have, particularly back home, we'll have highly conscientized shoppers poring over food labels. What are they eating? Is it green, or is it organic, and is it locally produced? And they'll spend hours doing this, but they wouldn't spend 2 seconds looking at a label to see if it's locally manufactured, or if some part of that is made in South Africa. And I keep myself, for goodness sake, we're all in this country. We're not all disappearing overseas. We're not going to Australia or Canada or the UK or so forth. We're here to stay. And for us to recognize that there are lives attached to these objects. There's a woman who lives in Pontyville who is stitching our most intimate item, our underwear, that we think about very carefully when we purchase. We can stand for hours deciding which bra or panty to wear, or to purchase, and in fact to wear. But we're not connected at all to the labor and the line, that whole production line, and these women who are doing this. So I am connected to these women, whether I like it or not, because they stitch these fabrics that sit against my skin. So I think if pageants and the work around what I'm doing with the local and textile industry can draw attention to that it's not as simple as just going down the store and picking up something. I think we need to start thinking about what kind of lives do we want to live. I mean, for goodness sake, we're in 2015, and I think the world is in a crisis. We're seeing these kinds of eruptions increasingly, racial eruptions. I look what's happening in the States. Certainly what's happening in the UK around questions of difference and belonging. So I think we need to realize and think about what kind of country and world we want to leave to our kids and our grandkids, and to start recognizing that we are connected in very profound ways.